Remember the OnePlus Nord CE6 Lite? When it was launched a couple of months ago, the base variant effectively started at around 19,000 rupees and most people weren't impressed. Fast forward to today and that very same phone now starts at 25,999 rupees. Normally, a 7,000 rupees price hike would make a phone a much worse deal. But I think the Nord CE6 Lite makes a lot of sense today. Why? Because the budget smartphone market has gone bonkers. We are now seeing mediocre processors, 720p displays, and even 4GB RAM as the starting variant for about 18 to 20,000 rupees. So, if you want a decent phone, you almost have to spend around 25,000 rupees. Which brings us to today's comparison. The iQOO Z11 Lite versus the OnePlus Nord CE6 Lite. Is the OnePlus really worth spending 6,000 rupees more? Let's find out. But before we begin, how about hitting that subscribe button? Let's start with the design. On paper, these two phones are almost identical. Plastic back, plastic frame, almost the same weight and thickness. But in the hand, the Nord CE6 Lite just feels nicer. This matte black finish looks and feels a lot like frosted glass and it does a great job of hiding fingerprints. The iQOO isn't bad. I like the marble finish and the dynamic light around the camera module gives it some character. But every time I picked it up, it just felt cheaper. Both phones are military standard certified. The iQOO gets IP65, the Nord IP64, but honestly, that's not a difference you'll notice. Connectivity is basically identical to USB 2.0, Wi-Fi 5, Bluetooth 5.4 and 2 TB microSD support on both. The only real edge goes to Nord with LDAC, aptX, aptX HD and LSDC support. So this round goes to the OnePlus. It simply feels like the better built phone. Display is where you really start seeing the 6,000 rupees difference. Just look at the front. The Nord gets a proper punch hole camera while the Z11 Lite is still rocking a teardrop notch. A teardrop notch in 2026? Yeah, not for me. Then there's the display itself. The Nord gets a 6.72-inch Full HD Plus LCD panel. The iQOO has a slightly larger 6.74-inch LCD, but it's only 720p. And the difference is obvious the moment you unlock them. Text is sharper, images look cleaner, and everything just feels crisper on the Nord. Even YouTube is a better experience. The Nord can play videos up to 4K 60fps, while the iQOO tops out at 1440p. Even colors look better on the Nord. Ironically, the iQOO is actually brighter on paper, with 1200 nits HBM versus 1000 nits on the OnePlus. Both use side-mounted fingerprint scanners because of their LCD panels. The Nord also gets a 144Hz refresh rate versus 120Hz on the iQOO. But in real life, they're basically the same, because you're only getting 144Hz in a handful of apps. You know, essential apps like the compass. Anyway, the Nord also gets stereo speakers, while the iQOO just gets a single speaker. Another comfortable win for the Nord. So, what about performance? Well, this one's not even close. The iQOO runs on the Dimensity 6300, the Nord gets the much faster Dimensity 7400 Apex. And that's not all. The iQOO starts with 4GB of RAM and 128GB of UFS 2.2 storage. The Nord starts with 6GB of LPDDR4X RAM, 128GB of faster UFS 3.2 storage. Then you look at the benchmarks and it isn't even a contest. Around 570,000 in AnTuTu for the iQOO, just over $1 million for the Nord. Geekbench, same story. 3D Mark, don't just look at the stability score, check the loop scores. The Nord is way ahead and that carries over into gaming. BGMI, COD Mobile, the Nord holds a smooth 90fps, the iQOO stuck at 60. Playable? Yeah sure. Enjoyable? Not really. So if performance matters, the Nord is in a completely different class. For software, the Nord ships with OxygenOS 16, while the iQOO gets OriginOS 6, both based on Android 16. Now yes, OnePlus has already confirmed it will switch to ColorOS starting with Android 17, but OxygenOS and ColorOS have essentially been the same for the last few years. So, not a big deal. More importantly though, OnePlus says they will be honoring all update promises despite switching to ColorOS. Speaking of updates, both brands promise 2 years of Android updates and 4 years of security patches. But with iQOO, you only get that if you buy the 6GB variant. The 4GB model, no word on that, so that's another reason to avoid it. Now, I usually prefer OxygenOS over OriginOS. On OnePlus flagships, it feels smoother, cleaner, and far more customizable. But on the Nord, a lot of those flagship features are gone. Things like app icon shortcuts, AI plus Mind, and Mindspace are missing. To be fair, iQOO has made similar cuts. Features like Origin Island are gone, and the interface just doesn't feel as polished as it does on its flagship phones. Both phones still give you plenty of AI tools for writing, editing, and productivity. And yes, both have bloatware. But the OnePlus feels cleaner simply because it doesn't bombard you with pointless app and game recommendation folders. This one again goes to the Nord, but by a much smaller margin. Now these are budget phones, so cameras aren't really the biggest priority here. Both get a 50 megapixel main camera and they're fine. In daylight, the difference is mostly the color science. The iQOO keeps things cooler and more natural. The OnePlus goes warmer, keeps more detail and gives you punchy colors. Portraits are a mixed bag. The iQOO doesn't over-whiten skin tones, which I like, but the photos can look a little flat. The Nord adds more contrast while keeping skin tones natural, so the shots have a bit more life. Edge detection isn't perfect on either, but both are good enough for Instagram. Low light is where both start struggling. The iQOO gets noisy and sometimes looks like a watercolor painting. The Nord isn't amazing either, but it keeps things under control much better. For selfies, we get 8 megapixel on the Nord and 5 megapixel on the iQOO. Neither of them are particularly impressive. Video is where the gap gets obvious. The Nord can shoot 4K at 30 fps with EIS. The iQOO tops out at 1080p at 30 fps only. Battery life is excellent on both. The Nord packs a huge 7000 mAh battery with 45 watt fast charging, while the iQOO gets a slightly smaller 6500 mAh cell with 44 watt charging. Both the phones will easily last you 2 days on a single charge. That's it, the iQOO does stretch a little further because of its weaker processor and 720p display. Charging speeds are pretty similar, although the Nord takes a hair longer to reach 100%. So, which one would I buy? Now look, the iQOO Z11 Lite isn't a bad phone. The problem is that you're making a lot of compromises. You lose out on the display, performance, cameras, software experience, and even long-term software support if you buy the 4GB variant. The battery life is excellent, but it isn't enough to make up for everything else. That's why the Nord CE6 Lite and other phones in its price bracket make more sense. Now, I want to hear from you guys. Would you spend the extra and buy the Nord or something similar? Or would you save the money and go for the iQOO Z11 Lite instead? Let me know your pick in the comments and I'll see you guys in the next one.